All right, so we are now live. Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey with Auto Alchemy, and I'm here with a very special guest. I've got Leon from Type Tips. And Leon,
Hey,
if you want to say hi, I'm pretty sure people know who you are, but if you
yes.
want to talk a bit about what you're doing, what you're involved in, and why you are drawn to socionics or typology in general.
Well, I'm doing nothing with my life. I'm doing some things, and a lot of things feel like uh, the theme of in it. Have a YouTube channel, Type Tips, and I like mainly the main thing I like to do is talk about how all the different functions operate, and also visual reading of the types. So those are my two main things. Aside
Awesome.
from that, playing guitar and singing.
Yeah, you're quite good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so I reached out to you because I've been a big fan of yours for a while, and I think I've
Yes.
been watching your videos for 2 years. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long you've been putting them out, probably a little bit longer than that.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, you've been a big inspiration for me as far as um, overcoming social anxiety because I read an article that you'd written a while back about how you went from somebody who could, barely function in front of a crowd to doing a TEDx talk. And I find this whole process of being in front of a camera very, very straining and draining. But
Yeah.
this
I
is,
could really appreciate that. I
yeah.
could really appreciate that.
And I actually noticed, so the topic of
Mm.
our conversation is going to be dreams and archetypes and how or what overlap there might be between typology and sort of dream interpretation, dream analysis. Maybe we'll disagree
Yes.
about whether there is any overlap, but the
Okay.
reason there's a connection to the article that you'd written. You talked about how after a really, really bad experience, and I can't think of what it was at the moment, but you had a dream about rain coming down your throat and just washing away.
Oh,
Um,
yes, I did. Yes.
yeah. Do you want to
Yes.
talk about that?
Oh, yeah. So, this is back at a time where I was really struggling with social anxiety. So, this is a time when I even had trouble speaking.
Mhm.
So, coming a long way now speaking in front of the camera, right? And
Yeah.
doing public speaking. I think back then, I always felt a lot of tension around my jaw when it came to talking with other people. And um, I would have trouble formulating complete sentences or be very uncertain of what I'm saying or stammering a little bit.
Hmm.
So, um, so one night I just had I really had enough, and so it's like kind of basically the story behind it was that in grad school I felt like my social anxiety was so severe because I was becoming socially isolated because of the amount of work I had to do. So I kind of cursed out at the universe. I was like so angry that night. But then that night I had a dream. I had a dream about there's basically rainfall pouring from the sky into my throat. So right here from the sky right here, and the feeling of it was very real.
Yeah.
So and it isn't like the next day I just woke up and hey, everything's fine. Uh, social skills are awesome and I could speak very fluidly. No, but what it did is that it gave me a lot of hope. So
Yeah.
that gave me the inspiration to, after a few months after that, it's I could really do something about this. And then I decided to apply to do a TED talk.
Hmm.
And that's the story. Is I applied because I thought I want to do something kind of more extreme to
Yeah.
overcome my social anxiety.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's actually a big motivation for me as far as making a YouTube channel. Not
Yeah.
only did I want to, I'm very obsessive about studying a lot of different topics, so I wanted to create a place where I could just make resources and turn my study into a product. I guess you could think of it that way. And um, but another motivation was that I'm very socially anxious and concerned with how people perceive me. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is a way of like pushing or steering into that fear a little bit. And I
Yes.
think that those are very, I think anybody could benefit from pushing into their fears and just trying to live with them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's really awesome.
I want to hear from you if you had some like very significant dream like that.
Oh, like that. Not anything that kind of or gave me hope in any way. You and I talked a little bit about this off camera, but I will briefly
Oh, hope is
mention.
kind of like hope is too enough.
Yeah, that might be right.
Yes.
Yeah, I've had dreams. So I never really related to the idea of this Jungian anima figure that would appear in your dreams or the shadow appearing in your dreams until I started considering the idea of being an ENTP. And I'm still on the fence, but I'm leaning pretty heavily in that direction at this point. And as soon as I thought, well, maybe I'm an ENTP, I had multiple dreams about women that I knew were either ISFJs or ISTJs, and
Oh yeah.
they were telling me things like I need you, and I knew that it wasn't about the woman. It was more about like that particular energy or perspective that I had disowned from my psyche, and how they're both kind of NE and SI are sort of tethered together, and
Oh,
that's how I conceptualized it anyway. And
that's very interesting.
I've had numerous dreams about people that I know are IJs, ISJs. There we go. Ugh.
Essays. And do you feel like a certain attraction towards them or a curiosity about them?
I do. I feel that they're very grounding. I definitely have my head in the clouds. But I think that, so for me, the real takeaway there is that I shouldn't be seeking that in another person, because I'm just going to project all of this other baggage onto them and think that they will complete me in some sort of psychological way. And I don't really want to turn anybody into that. I've done that before and it doesn't ever go well. So yeah, I'm taking it more as a lesson of, these are like, I think of the functions as archetypes, like being characters in your own psyche, and they're in conversation, and some of them are a little alienated from others. And so I'm trying to make it more of a priority in my life to actually like clean my room and meditate and develop daily habits that will, serve me in the long run. And I'm trying to get that energy and create it for myself, as opposed to projecting it onto another person or draining it out of another person.
Oh, good. And to get things, I clean my room recently too.
Yeah.
So I have to tap into that SI,
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, it can be
So
tough.
yeah, it could be tough. And well, for me, when it comes to typology in dreams, what I see is actually I notice different types show up in my dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Uh-oh.
well, yeah. Everything fine on your side?
You were getting a little bit glitchy on my end, but I think you're fine now.
Okay, I'm good.
Yep.
All right. All right. So there's and another interesting thing is that a lot of my dreams have stock characters. So it's like they're always people from like college and high school, like, but they get to play different characters. Like they're almost like actors, and they get to play different characters. But depending on whatever type they are, like I would see like someone who's introvert thinking type. Like I think I remember there's a time I was trying to like figure things out, right? And then I saw this like this guy from this guy from my high school who is an introvert thinking dominant type, and then and he showed up in my dream. So and we were like looking at a whole bunch of pipes, and he's like pointing out like all the problems involved. And another one was I also related to social anxiety. I wanted to work on my my extrovert feeling, right? It's not like kind of not one of my value functions, but I remember recalling like I did see like an extrovert feeler in my dream, and she was just like sitting there, right? And then but and she had like the man like the this desire for this social harmony, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of way back, so I can't really recall that well. But
Yeah.
those are I do have things depending on like what I'm seeking then, like different archetypes. Like you're almost like playing like tarot card and you get like different archetypes depending on the situation.
Yeah. With the introverted thinking lead, was that did that dream have any sort of like demonic aspect to it, or was it a
Mm,
healthier relationship?
no, he's just like showing me some tips.
Okay. Okay.
I need some tips. Yeah, yeah. I do like to think about dreams a lot. I used to record a dream. I had a dream journal, and it's um, it's been. I think it was like year 2015. I started to do this dream journaling stuff, and then I had a journal right next to my bed, right? And
Mhm.
later on, I would have a voice recorder next to my bed because that's just like faster,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
That's a good
so
idea.
yeah, it's a good idea, right? And then the basic thing is basically that I would have trouble recalling my dreams, but the more you try, the better you get. And you just write down whatever you have, no matter how stupid it is. So that's basically my experience. Is that the first second when I wake up, I could remember the dream. I'm like, oh wow, this is so stupid. I'm not gonna write any of this stuff down. That was my impression. It's like it's not worth writing down. And then when I go back and I reflect on it, then everything starts to make sense to me. Like even it's like the dumbest thing like ever. And then things
Yeah.
start to make sense. It's like, wow, it actually makes sense. I realized that the dream world speaks through a different language. So the
Hmm.
things that to us sounds really silly or embarrassing or stupid to the dream world is different because it's coming from the unconscious and it comes through symbols and ways of communicating which are different from like our way of what we consciously deem as that is appropriate or that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's different.
Well, there's definitely, I think, a sacrifice with so in dreams you kind of sacrifice logical cohesion for the sake of like symbolic richness. So you might be walking through a hallway and then instantaneously you're sitting in a bath full of spiders. And I don't know what you could take away from that, but yeah, I think that it's because
Intuition more important than thinking. I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah, yeah, these connections are I don't really know how to articulate it, but I think that that is sort of why dreams can be so rich is because they can kind of push aside those other things that we focus on more in day to day living, anyhow.
Absolutely, yes. Um, mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Is to give us access to thoughts that we don't normally, think about. Normally, think it's okay, right?
Hmm.
Um, my way of recording dreams is so I was trying to figure out how to record them because a lot of it just didn't make sense. So I would write down and each day I would write down more, and then the more I write down, the more I remember because one memory leads to another memory to
Yeah.
another memory, and then but it's symbolic. So what do you do with it? So for me, what I did was like when I'm reading back, I make a mark, so I have it written down. I'll make a mark when I felt like there was some sort of emotional reaction I had to it. So
Oh,
I always looked at like something happened here and it had this emotional reaction. It doesn't make sense to me and I can't analyze it, but I know how I reacted to it. And when I saw this, maybe when I saw, make an example, I saw a guitar and then I got afraid, right? So right now I can't make sense of it, but there's something I have a relation with a guitar that makes me feel fear, right? So there's fear, and then the next thing is something make me feel angry, something would make me feel embarrassed. So I write down like what are the emotions for each scene, and from that, seeing my relationship, my emotional relationship to whatever some symbols happen in my dream, I'm able to analyze the dream.
hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
need to. I would like to get back into dream journaling. I used to do it every day for a long time, but I got out of the habit. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think that especially if you're someone like me who has a lot of recurring thematics in their dreams, once you start catching those, I think that the dreams stand out longer and they last longer in your memory after you wake up.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you, so just kind of moving away from typology for a bit,
Okay.
what, I know it's probably hard to do that since you're always thinking in these terms, but what is your general philosophy on dreams, and what kind of value do you think that we can get out of them as people?
Oh, my general philosophy of dreams.
Hmm.
Um, I think, well, they're definitely a way for us. People like I read these things about how dreams are kind of this random neural firing, right?
Yeah.
That takes place, um, and then they're completely random, and then here's the proof why, right? But when I look at them, I feel like the wisdom from the dreams surpass everyday existence. If you could
Yeah.
get past the bias of, oh, this is silly, this is dumb, right? Like I did, like every time I wake up, it's like that's the dumbest thing I've become. And then when I
Yeah.
look back, it's like, wow, there's like something to it. The dreams, right? I think with this approach, I think when they say it's like the random neural firing, I know they're trying to be scientific, but the problem is that it's like they're kind of like jumping to conclusions. Like it has to be
Hmm.
this way. It has to be materialist. So it's
Yeah.
kind of comes in with an assumption already without it being tested, right? And there's different ways. I believe there's different ways to test. One is, um, yeah, you could test it, and then you could also look into your intuition, right? And you could there's different ways to access what these dreams are, what they
Right.
can be, right?
Right.
So that's my thing. I think there's different dreams. I believe there are what Carl Jung calls numinous dreams.
Hmm.
So dreams that have profound meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah, those exist as well.
Yeah. But you don't think that those are the not every dream is a numinous dream.
No, but also I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know either.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'll share like a numinous dream. Is that I had a dream in which I was on a train, and then I saw everyone board a train. So I was like, I looked in the train, and my friends were in a train, and then suddenly I saw these other people I don't know on train, and I realized everyone in the world was on this train, is boarding this train. And then when we're on a train, we're looking out the windows, and then we look out one window and we see a scene from someone's life. So I saw a scene from my friend's life where he was suffering, like
Mm.
something that he is struggling with. And then I looked at another window as like in someone else's life and somebody else's life and somebody else's life. And then and then when I woke up, uh, I opened a uh, dream dictionary, right? So there's things that tend to symbolize other things. I know, like for dreams, like personal, what you personally assign the symbols is the most important, right? But
Mhm.
like sometimes there's more uh, themes that might be more universal, right? And then when I looked at train, the word for train, and then the meaning is that we're all in it together.
Mhm.
Like this involves everybody. So the dreams, like we're all suffering, um, and we're all in it together. And
Man,
this is life.
that's pretty fascinating. It actually kind of ties into. So I wrote a novel not too long ago,
Oh wow.
and yeah, and so I mean, basically, without giving much away, that is essentially the theme, and sort of like the plot gimmick is that this young girl finds these weird television channels that enable her to like gaze into these moments of immense suffering in different people's lives, and it's kind of like
Oh,
being situated at the center of a carousel, and like all of these different stories are they're kind of short stories that revolve around the main plot.
oh,
um,
this is your story?
this is my novel that I wrote. So
You're writing about my dream.
so look, that was maybe this is a numinous experience right here.
Yeah. Or
I'm
maybe
gonna wake up soon.
my dream just plagiarized content from your novel. The
Maybe.
Dream Makers, they just ran out of like. Have you seen that movie? Was like about the emotions, the
Oh,
cartoon animated.
Up? No, not Up. Obviously
Not
not
up,
Up.
but the
I
other
can't.
one, yeah,
Yeah, it's a Pixar movie. What is
yeah,
it called? I cannot think of what it's
it's
called.
about joy and sadness and all. But it's like, yeah, and then they had the scene where they had the Dream Makers. The people.
In
Mhm.
Yeah, Inside Out.
Yeah, Inside Out. That's
Yeah,
it.
I
Yeah,
really like that movie. That was a fun movie.
yeah, it was.
Um, cool. So, I think that you might be a little more skeptical towards uh, some of my thoughts, but I'll throw them out there and then we'll see what you think.
Please
Um,
share.
so, so I tend to think of the cognitive functions as being so people really strive to have strict definitions of what is, introverted sensing, what is extroverted sensing,
Hmm.
but I tend to think of them more in terms of sort of like webs or nets that kind of
Okay.
like they kind of specify a vague cloud of like things that have a family resemblance, but they're not necessarily
Mm.
all going to easily go back to a strict definition. And
Okay.
so I think of that as being like whenever I try to interpret my dreams or look at my dreams, I I can say like, oh, this is an NI situation, or this person is
Mm.
really embodying like the NI archetype, whatever that means.
Okay. So
And
yeah, I see like when you said web, right? The
yeah,
first thing I thought about was an archetype or like a constellation,
yeah.
right? It's actually not very far from what I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Uh, it is because it's kind of very interesting to look at like archetypes in general, because you could identify situations related to an archetype, right?
Mhm.
And when you look at a situation, there's no strict definition of what that is. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, there could be. I believe it's kind of like when physics they talk about like the light wave and the particle, right?
The
So at one
duality.
level, it's like almost like a particle, like it's a strict like definition. Another
Yeah.
way is actually like it's vaguer and it's more like an archetype. And
Yeah.
he's you can look at like videos of like movies or whatever, and you could see archetypical uh, introvert intuition, archetypical introvert thinking, and
Mhm.
it seems to have like a vibe, like a um, and uh, and it doesn't seem to be just boiled down to like how does your brain function? Like it functions like oh, extra intuition is equal to many different possibilities that are, seem objectively valid to the subject, something like that. It's
Mhm.
like there's an impression, like I do get like an impression and like an archetype. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that that wasn't completely out of nowhere
Well,
for you.
it's really interesting that someone else also thinks this way too, because
Yeah.
I don't think I even shared that on my channel. So like, but
Mhm.
I definitely started to have that kind of feeling, and
Yeah.
maybe only within the last year.
Mhm. So I have a suspicion that like recurring dreams and
Mhm.
certain nightmares that we come back to actually
Yes.
somehow they're like casting a net and capturing some of that probably like a disowned function of ours, maybe like the inferior function. So for me, thinking that I'm an ENTP, so not only do I dream about these
Mhm.
introverted sensing women, but I also have a lot of dreams that I automatically interpret as being about SI inferiority. So most of my recurring dreams are about all of my teeth crumbling in my mouth or turning into wax and breaking off in big chunks.
Oh,
Or
that's a pretty common one with
yeah,
me.
that's a pretty common one. So maybe
Yeah.
you can't get a lot of mileage out of that one, but
Mhm.
typically I have a lot of weird sensory dreams. Something is wrong with my body, something that I haven't been paying attention to in
I've
the
got my S. I forgot, maybe forgets to brush my teeth, and now my teeth are
yeah,
gonna fall out.
yeah, exactly. So that's at least how I kind of like conceptualize it through that framework.
Yeah,
I guess it is difficult because a lot of people do have similar, but I think I don't really have as many dreams about like the judgments of other people and what are they thinking about me. So I don't have any of the dreams about suddenly being naked in school and running through the hallways. Like that has
mhm.
never really been like a point of neuroses for me. I don't know. Do you have any recurring dreams that might give us
Yeah,
insight into your mind?
yeah. My most common recurring dream has always has the same message, which is to loosen up.
Mm.
So I think it's pretty much tied with the social anxiety, where everything is, um, you, you feel very tense inside, and you feel like you're afraid to say something inappropriate, or you're afraid to not do things that are, you know, not rule bound, like going outside something that's rule bound socially, right? So
Yeah.
everything, a lot of that's my most common one is about loosening up, and the different manifestations of it is that one time I had a dream about being very drunk, and then and then um, and then some people started talking to me, and I just did whatever back, like and I was like just making gibberish back, but as a joke,
Mm.
right? And then I said, hey, why don't we I just got together random people. I was like, hey, why don't we just play soccer? And there's like no soccer balls. So I was like, so I took a rug and I rolled it up and said, here's the soccer ball. And I kicked it. And I thought I got the people who are closest by to play with me. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just like the spontaneous, like kind of like a extroverted energy. Right.
Huh.
And it's like, there's no rules. You just like, you just, you just play along and you just have fun, and then you can
Mm.
make things happen that way. Another one
Yeah.
is another example is like I saw this girl, and it's a girl who I used to be into, uh, probably like also 3 years ago, and she had this hat on, and she took the hat and she covered her face, and the hat became a face, and then it's like, and I said, she's a tactical artist, and that's like the phrase I use. She's a tactical artist, and the basic idea was like, I realized it's a projection, because actually I saw myself in her, right? But it's like a part of myself I wouldn't live out myself, which is again to be spontaneous and just to be this playful artist who just does things spontaneously and
Yeah.
randomly, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
Which is why I recently had these videos of me just running up and down a subway car, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I saw
also
those.
like artwork. I mean, they're like of like looking at artwork, and then they're really dumb, but it's just like that energy I was hoping to embody.
Yeah, that's exactly the word that I was thinking. Embody. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as playful a person as I would like to be, and I think that I should
Mm-hmm.
embody a little bit of that myself. I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking that so going for some reason when you were talking about that, I thought again about the dream about the rain kind of clearing your throat, and with my endless need to find patterns where they may not be, I I wanted to think of that as maybe like it's kind of like clearing you up to articulate this inner world of feeling in an extroverted thinking kind of way. Like you're going to take all of this stuff that you have kind of balled up inside you and then give it a form that can be kind of digestible by other people.
Yeah, yeah, that could be. That could be.
But that's just me. I'm just trying to find patterns. So
Yeah. Mr.
I
ENTP trying to find patterns.
it's funny. So I'm glad that you are not opposed to the idea of me being an ENTP, because one of my subscribers, she's really adamant that I am an INFJ, and
Hmm.
when she found out that we would be speaking at a certain point, she was like, "Just ask Leon; he'll tell you. You know, he will let you
Oh yeah.
know."
I, you do remind me of other ENTPs, like your mannerisms.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
see it a
I
lot,
would say.
but I don't
Yeah.
know. I thought maybe you could help me unpack a strange sequence of dreams of mine, if you don't mind. Let's
Uh,
see.
yeah, I like to listen. I don't know if I'll be able to.
That's just fine. Listening is great. Well, okay. So I know that the teeth dream is something that a lot of people might find relatable, and probably other body malfunction dreams are relatable. But here's one that I don't really hear of a lot. Um,
Mhm.
I have a lot of dreams about either. So I have dreams about going into very tiny stores that have old video games,
Mhm.
um, and they're always like games that I wish that I had played as a child, games that I did play that I really miss, and they're always kind of locked up behind glass, and I can never get to them.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think of it as being like this nostalgic kind of longing for the comfort of childhood, and maybe like SIFE type comforts. Um,
Oh.
but yeah, I've had dozens of these dreams, and every time I wake up, I'm a little bit disappointed because I'm always right on the cusp of like buying a console and then buying the game, and then I'm going to get to play it, and I never do. So disappointing.
Mhm.
It just shatters me.
Yeah. All
But
right.
that's
So
really all
that's
I've
your
got.
interpretation, right?
Yeah, that's my
And
interpretation.
you said this is a series of dreams that you have. Okay. Well,
But as you said earlier,
um,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
do you have a bunch of games with you?
No, no, I don't. I have a handful. I don't really play video games.
Hmm.
I've obviously done it in the past, but it's mainly a matter of me not really keeping up with what's going on, and
Yeah. Mhm.
I don't really like to spend money on things besides books. So it's just
Hmm.
if I'm easily entertained without having to spend money, then I will just opt for that entertainment.
Okay. And then when you're kind of separated from all those games, what was like the emotions behind that when you were
Right.
dreaming?
I never think about that. That's why I need to talk to NFPs more. um, yeah, I guess it was excitement of having
Hmm.
this because there are hundreds of different games and they have colorful cartridges, and it's almost like looking at an aisle of candy at the candy store, and just so overwhelming. So there's mainly
Hmm.
excitement, and then like I said, a sense of nostalgia, and finally I'm not able to get through the glass, and I'm a little bit frustrated, a little bit sad, and then I just feel so defeated at the end of the dream because I know that I'm not going to get the thing that I'm trying to get.
Okay. And so what words do you like when you hear the word games or game console? What words pop into your mind?
Mm. Immediately play.
Hmm.
So that kind of ties into what you were saying earlier about being more spontaneous and
Any
trying
more? Any more?
anything besides
Play.
play.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the other associations aren't as good. I think of like immaturity, laziness, escapism,
Mm.
um, and distraction.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
So yeah. So I could kind of imagine like when you were you're separated from the games, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that it's like, then this is just a possibility that maybe it's your adult side that is separating
Hmm.
yourself from it, right? Because obviously, when I asked, you don't have the games with you right now, right?
Yeah.
And then imagine the books could represent like kind of what we imagine to be like uh, something that isn't entertaining, but it's for adults,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way. So that's kind of what I thought. So if you want me to kind of look into the dream, that's so far what I see
Yeah.
from that
Yeah.
dream.
That's good. Speaking of books, so I've been trying to be a little more deliberate about exploring the actual like Jungian philosophy and people who've come after Jung. So I ordered one of Dr. Beebe's books, and I spent maybe $100 just buying like other assorted books, and I got this one. Um, it's called "Goddesses in Every Woman" by
Mm.
Jean Shinoda Boleyn, and essentially, she's like kind of interpreting the archetypes through the model of the Olympian gods and goddesses. So it's like just to kind of like give them a face. It's like she's like, okay, so these goddesses aren't actually what the archetypes are, but it's a useful kind of shortcut for thinking about it. And as somebody
Yeah.
who's always really appreciated Greek mythology, I think it's pretty cool. So I'm just plugging that. If you ever have any spare cash and want to read some stuff,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's great. And what do you find personally useful for in the book?
hmm. Well, I don't know that this book will have a lot that applies to me, but
Mhm.
she has another book called Gods and Every Man. So I'm kind of, that one hasn't arrived yet, but I also ordered it. And I guess I'm looking forward to thinking about what, with that framework, thinking about what archetypes might be active or constellated, is the term she uses, within me, and
Mhm.
which ones am I neglecting, and how do I become more integrated. That's something that I really am highly focused on right now, is kind of integrating all of the disparate parts of my psyche. And so
Wonderful.
that's why dream work is
Mhm.
really appealing to me, because these are like images that I don't really have conscious control of, but they're trying to inform me of something. They're jumping out. They're saying, "Hey, listen up. There's something valuable here."
Yes. Mhm.
So I don't know, but I'm very excited about this leg of my intellectual journey.
Yeah. Yeah. This is pretty exciting. So like yeah, I do like to think of in terms of archetypes, right? And
Yeah.
when I think about archetypes, I think like people say, oh, dude, you look at all these myths and there's all these silly gods and goddesses. Of course, they're made up, right? And but I believe like the truth is like behind the image is the idea behind the image, right? And then maybe the best way to communicate is through images, right,
Mhm.
rather than words, and that's how the dream world could be able to communicate these messages. But what's ultimately underlying it is like the idea of whatever that archetype is, and I think those ideas are just as real as anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they tend to apply to more things because they're more abstract. They kind of,
True. Yeah.
they feel almost like more foundational in a way than
Hmm.
the day-to-day reality. And I hate that say that, because it just kind of highlights how disconnected I am from the sensory world. But
Hmm.
I think this is a weird bit of speculation, but I think that developmentally, so when I was a kid, I really desperately needed glasses, and
Yeah.
I didn't know. So I'm wearing contacts right now, but I didn't know that I was essentially blind, and I didn't really conceptualize that I was struggling to see things at school a lot more than other kids were. And
Yeah.
so, the world was pretty much like this hazy horizon wrapping around my head. And So I found it very easy to say that doesn't matter. Like that stuff out there is irrelevant, and everything that's percolating up here is what matters. Um,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
then, so anyhow, eventually I got glasses, and I went up to my mom and I was just like holding random items and saying like, "Mom, but look at it. It's 3D. How is it like? How does it have three dimensions? This is so crazy. I thought everything was supposed to be flat
So
like a
funny.
cartoon." So yeah,
Wow. Yeah, so you became your sensing became stronger, right?
and
That
yeah.
kind of reminded me when I was on Adderall.
Oh, really?
Everything became more 3D. It's like, wow, everything had some like this house away from the bush in front of the house. Like I could see the distance. It's like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah. This is what it's like for other people.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So I really I applaud you on your journey. Like you, I like the way you think about dreams. By the way, just the approach. I feel like it's still grounded in a way, like the way you talk about it, and the way you shared it. It was like very like it's like very earnest. Like you
Ah,
talking about you're really
thank you.
like figuring. I'm trying to understand yourself and figuring things out and unraveling the journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think I'm just trying to get to the heart of that FI trickster, trying to understand what he's up
I'm
to.
here. I'm here.
I'm
Tricking you.
feeling very deceived by you right now.
Do you feel like FI is a trickster for you?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure that I'm thinking of it. I don't know that I have a good framework for articulating this, but yeah, I mean, typically, so I don't really allow myself, I don't even know if that's the best way to describe it. I don't see, I'm doing this whole like introverted thinking, qualifying,
Mhm.
constantly reframing what I'm saying as I'm doing it. And it's so irritating. But anyway, yeah, essentially, I don't really check in. Like, I never say like what's going on here with the binary of my heart. Am I getting a yes or a no with this situation? I just kind of push that aside because for me it comes across as being like irrelevant information, um,
Mhm.
which is probably just so utterly foreign to you. um, but ultimately, so whenever I
How dare you, though? I'm just kidding.
ultimately whenever I do, I guess I understand on an intellectual level that there are people who are very adept at using FI, and there's a reason that I don't use it. It's because I'm bad at it, and it's because it tricks me. So the few times that I have tried to like follow my heart, I always end up shooting myself in the foot, or like I allow myself to be manipulated by somebody because I'm like, oh, this person is really, I adore this person, and I don't see all of the ways that they're deceiving me. And I dated somebody who was an ISFP, for a little bit, and
Interesting.
now she kind of crops up in my dreams as like a trickster.
They call in sociology, they call that the conflictor.
Yeah, yeah. So she shows up in my dreams a lot as a trickster figure, and
Oh, really? Wow.
yeah. And actually, last night, maybe in preparation for this conversation, um, last night she showed up in my dream, and basically, I saw her at a coffee shop, and I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended to be asleep. But then she grabbed me and said that she wanted to say goodbye and that she was leaving, and that she was like done with me, um,
Hmm.
and was no longer tricking me. And immediately after that, I started walking across my college campus, my old college campus, with an INTJ person that I know, and we were like, it was like walking with my shadow, like we were like arm in arm, like against the world, and it felt very symbolically resonant. But I haven't really tried to unpack it yet because it just happened.
Against the world of the feels.
Yeah.
Good morning, Fuzzy. You move away from that.
Feeling is not so bad. Feeling is not so bad.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think people tend to think that I am an F of some sort just
Yeah.
because of all the self-reflection that I've done. I do I recognize the value of being integrated, and I kind of sing the praises of like, oh, it's actually important to focus on harmony, and it's good to check with your sense of authenticity because I haven't done any of this, or it's not something that I think about naturally, and
Yeah.
I'm only now realizing the value in it. So people kind of see me preaching my weaknesses, having realized that they're important, and they think, oh, this guy's talking way too much about the way that he feels about the situation, and an ENTP would never do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you do come across as ENTP, and I think a lot of ENTPs I know, they have kind of like a, at least on the outside, like it's definitely like a soft personality, soft like that's my impression of them. I think maybe those who are there's two subtypes. One is the NE ENTP and one's the TI. Maybe like more so the NE version comes off as a feeling type because they're just
Yeah.
like soft. The TI might be critical, but like the NE, like yeah, it's just like but it's like an impression. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I wonder. I've only heard a little bit about the subtypes, so maybe you could share some insight. But do you think that it matters? Do you think that which subtype you are impacts the way that you use the other functions? So I know that TI is sort of the parent function.
Right.
Is that going to manifest differently if you are the TI subtype versus being the NE subtype?
Yeah, because the TI subtype is like a dick.
Yeah, no, I've known a few.
They seem sharper, like they seem like very like anal, and then and ready to critique, right?
Yeah,
And then so yeah, that definitely comes. You said your main question is like whether they use the functions differently.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe like the NE subtype has more access to their extrovert feeling.
Hmm.
It seems like at times, like I know like a lot of ENTPs are like almost like completely soft. Like if there's a group of people who are like there's some sort of conflict in debating something, and maybe like someone's in trouble, right? Someone
Yeah,
is in trouble for it, and the NE subtype would always pick the softer position on that person. They're like more like pretty forgiving, right?
yeah.
And then but it's interesting. They're kind of like they're thinking type though, but they
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, it reminds me
That's
of
my
something
impression.
that Dr. Beebe said when you spoke to him, and it really resonated with me and kind of helped me clarify my own understanding of my type. He said that TI, so most people who interface with ENTPs, um, TI is very sort of probing and he like you're constantly asking questions of the other person, and I suppose that it's for your own benefit really, for mapping out the territory, but it can come across as being, I guess, like a little more socially oriented just because you're kind of more engaged in conversation than I
Oh yeah,
think. Yeah.
absolutely. Ask like if you're very curious about someone and ask these very open-ended questions.
Hmm.
I think that helps build rapport, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think I've got maybe a few more questions for you. Oh, okay. This is sort of maybe an easy one, but why do you think it is that some people are attracted to dreams while other people find them kind of boring? So I have certain friends who don't want to talk about their dreams at all or don't want to hear me ramble about my dreams. What do you think is the dispositional difference there?
Oh, what do I think?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in terms of disposition, yeah, there's definitely people who are not really into dreams. It could be for many different reasons, but one reason I can think of is kind of one I mentioned before is um, maybe a lack of understanding of what, like, basically is bringing a lot of conscious bias into the world. So usually people who are not into dreams, they live their life mainly in the realm of the consciousness, like very like I can determine things. Everything I do is deliberate or rational. Um, I think yeah, that's one reason why that could be the case.
I used
Um,
to be more like that, honestly.
mhm.
I used to be
Yeah.
more on the dickish side of, being a little too fixated on how things fit into the materialistic, rational framework and sort of writing certain things off up front, completely disqualifying them from being valid
Mhm.
conversations.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I've softened on that stance, but
Yeah. Mhm.
uh, yeah, I could see people just saying that that is outside of the purview of anything meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, another reason maybe some people's dreams are just boring. I have my sister who tells me like most of the things she dreams about is going to the ATM and just going to the ATM and drawing money from
Yeah, some people just
it.
have dreams like that. It's
Yeah.
interesting, but I
Yeah.
bet in some way that is still archetypal for them. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, what type is your sister?
She's an INTP.
INTP? Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. You should have her on your channel at some point.
I don't think she'll be on my channel.
I
I
used to
don't think she
think,
wants to be on my channel.
fair enough. I used to think that I used to think that I was an INTP for like 3 years. So I'm a little more
Yeah.
you talk a fair amount about INTPs on your channel. At least
Hmm.
I think more than you've talked explicitly about ENTPs. So I have I'm putting in a request right now to get more information so I can understand myself.
Okay. Great.
No
Um,
pressure.
I have a question for you. Do you have like lucid dreaming?
Yes, it's been a while, but
Hmm.
um, so I have. That's a good question because it opens up a whole can of worms. Um,
Yes.
I suffer from sleep paralysis quite a bit,
Oh, me
and
too.
yeah, yeah. Do you have
Yeah, half the time I wake up, I have sleep
yeah,
paralysis.
yeah. So I don't know. These are probably two kind of intertwined issues, but I have sleep paralysis, and I also have an occasional tendency to jump out of bed and like act out my dreams. Um, but anyway, I guess what I get the point of that is that whenever I experience sleep paralysis, if I can calm myself down, then I can like slip back into the dream world while maintaining that clutch on consciousness, and then I can kind of manipulate my dreams a bit. But my my abilities are a little bit lacking, so I will say like, "Oh, I'm going to jump into the air and I'm going to fly away," and I will just jump maybe 10 feet in the air. So I can only do sort of like a half version of what I want to do. I don't have
Yeah.
complete control over it. Um, I don't know. Do you lucid dream?
This has been a long time ago, but yeah, I had, and yeah, there's definitely like almost like a training process where you're trying to like remind yourself to lucid dream or
Yeah.
to remind yourself that to check whether you're in dream or not,
Yeah.
right? And then there's for things like you're putting your hand through your finger through your hand, or you're
Mhm.
looking at the clock and you're seeing trying to notice if there's something bizarre or off,
Yeah.
right?
Um,
And
my ex-girlfriend used to try to breathe through her nose while pinching her nose shut. and she would do that every day so that she could lucid dream if she ever did it.
Is it the ISFP?
No, this one is an ENFP.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We actually had a
Interesting.
YouTube channel back when I thought that I was an INTP, but it is no
Mhm.
longer. It is purged from YouTube.
Oh, yeah, it's no longer there. Was
No.
it? It's now it's called ENFP INTP Coffee. The
Actually,
original channel before that channel showed up.
it was actually called. It's a pretty good name. Intuitive Peas in a Pod. Pretty good.
Yeah. Um,
Do
so,
you
mhm.
um, do you feel like you ever get any of that extroverted sensing energy in your dreams, and like what kind of role does it play? Is it a trickster for you? Do you, I don't know, maybe you've never thought about it like that before, but looking back, could you make sense of that question?
Okay. Well, the thing I thought about was, since we're on, was on the topic of lucid dreaming, was that I had a lucid dream in which um, I was flying in the air, and I was like, I'm flying in air. It's like, wait, I must be dreaming, right? So I was flying over the ocean, and then there's trees on a horizon, and I was like, make everything more HD. And everything became clear. Like it was like the trees were more vivid, the water was more vivid,
Mm.
the visually, I felt more the air, and then so that, I guess that's the SC part.
That's fun.
I don't know. But like anyway, later in the dream, there's these pirate ships, and then I was flying through pirate ships and over them, and then I saw Santa Claus, and Santa Claus had this machine gun, and I had this machine gun, and we started shooting at each other while flying in and out of these pirate ships. So that was my lucid dream.
That's amazing.
In terms of the trickster, I think when I look, this is just my own view of the Dr. Beebe's work, is that these are all terms in relationship to our consciousness.
Hmm.
So like it is a trickster to our consciousness, right? I
Yeah.
don't think it's objectively a trickster,
Yeah.
right? This is my way of subtly trying to convince you that FI is okay. It's my secret agenda. No, it's anyway, so I think it's just a trickster to our consciousness. So that's what it appears to. It's to the outside world where we overreact to our trickster function, so it's really a matter of perspective, right? So extrovert sensing is something I would overreact to, right? Until I start reading about socionics, and then I start to understand the nature of, because I think socionics and Dr. Beebe are kind of tapping into the same thing, where they call it, like socionics, they call it the polar, right? But it
Yeah.
basically has a similar concept as a trickster, where you have a very negative reaction, repulsion to the idea of it, right?
Yeah.
So so that's because otherwise I can't really think of dream material related typology.
Yeah.
So in
Well,
that sense.
I've got one more good one that maybe we can end on.
Okay.
So I know that. So I got to find it in my notes here. If I try to do it from memory, I will butcher it. Okay, so I know that Jung said something along the lines of, it's through the shadow that we meet the anima or the soul. And I've
Okay.
had a lot of very interesting dreams about, well, about ISFJ women who turn into ISFPs. So then they take on like this SE kind of, and they become sort of like negative demonic figures in my dreams. And it's like I don't really know what to make of that. So for example, had a dream that I was on my old college campus and bumped into somebody who, even though I don't know her type for sure, she's always given off kind of an ISTJ vibe, and she um, is like works at a museum and is like just very very anal and deliberate about organizing, the things around her. And anyhow, she seems at least to be an SI dom, and so I met her in the stream, and she was like, "Oh, it's really great to see you," and there was some like romantic chemistry. There was a spark there between us in the dream, and then
Wow.
she invited me to her performance of Rocky Horror. I don't know if you're familiar.
Um, yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it, but
Okay.
I heard about it. Yeah.
Well, it's a very, very extravagant, kind of in your face, sensual thing. So people
Hmm.
are, wearing corsets and dancing. They're being very
Yeah, yeah. Well,
risque.
I imagine like yeah, ISFPs being there or something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. So,
is
so she transformed into um, the main character, or one of the main characters,
Mhm.
Frankenfurter, with like a big curly haired wig and a corset, and she was dancing, and it was like, this is not, you're not who I thought you were. You've become a monster. It felt very
That's so
very,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it felt very meaningful in a weird way, but I haven't figured that one out either.
Okay. That's that, that's really interesting. So SI dominate changing into ISFP, right?
Hmm.
And then
I mean, I guess actually it would be more like an ESFP in this very extravagant show, but but
that's like
yes,
a
same
because I kind
quadra.
of imagine like the quadra. That's like a quadra theme,
Yeah,
right? That sort of subculture is like a very opposed to the lightheartedness of your quadra thing.
yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely a very interesting dream. Um, um, but you seem to do you have a track you have attraction to your opposite like SI because you mentioned like SI woman, right?
Yeah, I definitely
Right.
do. A
Okay.
very strong one, uh,
Yeah.
which
That's
then
the
gets.
thing because then I go ahead.
I was just gonna say, then I get into trouble with my tricky introverted feeling. It kind of like
Hmm.
well, I don't want to get too much into like my personal drama, but I tend to be drawn to people, especially ISFJs, who have this FE warmth, but at the same time, like usually it's somebody who's not like well developed and somebody who's bad for me, but I'm like, oh, but they're they're an
Yeah.
ISFJ, and yeah, I
Hmm.
just get kind of dragged along by that poor emotional evaluation.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that creates a very interesting relationship to your anima because if
Hmm.
you're attracted to SI. For me, I'm not attracted to my dual.
You're
No,
not? Okay.
I'm not. I find my conflict more attractive.
Oh,
Your manners is more attractive to me. So
so
like an
for
ESTJ
you,
compared to ESTJ. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. I mean, I think that's fair. And any person that is an NFP that I've ever spoken to, they've never expressed any attraction to STJs. Um, I don't know what it is.
Mm,
But
yeah, I think maybe it depends. Like I think also like every single personality type is almost an archetype. So depending on whatever you needed at a certain time, you present a certain personality type because that is the fitting archetype for you. Do you
mhm,
have like some sort of connection with your anima right now, which is very strong?
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it will probably. Well, I think that as I try to integrate those energies myself, um, without relying on another person. Maybe that won't be as much of a fixation in the future. It's definitely become stronger in the past couple of years anyway.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But hopefully I escape. It's hard to feel so um, powerless over these projections that we sometimes create.
Oh yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be very difficult.
Well, I think that might be all I've got. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to say. Could have been better
Yeah, I think
prepared, so
that's
I
it for
apologize
now.
to anybody who.
It's really good, and I like to be able to continue our conversation too.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Leon, for appearing on the channel. And nobody, I think I saw one viewer had tuned in, but people will watch it in the future.
Hey, hello, one viewer.
So I hope everybody enjoyed this. I'm going to try to have more people on as time goes on. And thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.
Okay. Good night.